It's the Sittin Sportside podcast, exclusively on 1045theteam.com.
Hey, welcome into the Sittin Sportside podcast. I am Eric Hanneman, your host of the Sittin Sportside podcast, but I am going solo today. No Mike James or any other of our contributors here on the Sittin Sportside podcast, and I'm happy to tell you guys to start off the podcast that me, John Longton, and Mike James will all be hosting a special edition of the Sittin Sportside podcast on Christmas Day on 1045 The Team from 12 to 3 in the afternoon. And we're currently on 1045theteam.com exclusively right now, though. It might be one of the shortest podcasts that I will ever do of a Sittin Sportside podcast. I can't really recall the shortest podcast that I have done, that we have done, or any of us have done, besides an interview. I think I might have done like a 10 to 15-minute podcast before. This one should remain in single digits. I'm going to say on record that it's the shortest, but I have no idea. Go in the archives on youtube.com/team1045 and the Sittin Sportside podcast tab there to listen to all of them and fact check me, as well as you can also find them on 1045theteam.com and click on the podcast tab or Sittin Sportside podcast if you didn't know already. It's a brief podcast. We're in the winter meetings, and the reason why it's brief, well, I guess it's because I just have a quick take, I guess, on so far the Yankees in the winter meetings in a recent report, and this could be a really short-lived podcast by the fact that things could just change by the time this is even posted. I don't think anything's going to be announced, so you have all of today to listen to it, and that's December 12th, 2018, but a lot can happen at the winter meetings right now, or trade, a signing, who knows. I might be mentioning Machado being signed to the Yankees, in my opinion on that, very quick, and he could go somewhere else within that hour. Right? So a lot of dominoes can fall, but this is a quick take about the Yankees, where they're at right now, what I think they should do in these winter meetings, just in general, and based on the topic of what Brian Cashman just said about Gary Sanchez, who was in trade talks, He was in the trade talks with this whole Syndergaard thing. I think a lot of Yankee fans would agree with me that the Syndergaard situation would make sense for the Yankees, but only at the correct price. And that would probably include one of the outfielders, either Hicks or Frazier, and I probably would say the latter is more what some team would probably be asking for. That's tough. As well as possibly an additional person of Andujar or maybe even Sanchez, something to that extent. And I think Syndergaard's price tag, so right off the bat, my opinion on that, I think his price tag probably would be too high, especially if especially since it includes the Mets. Especially if it's from the Mets. Like, we're giving the pieces that the Yankees are giving up are to the Mets, not to a third party like the Marlins. Then the price is going to be exceptionally high. Even the Marlins are going to be asking for some of the highest prices. And so for Syndergaard, it's under control. Actually, it would make sense, right? But if it's Andujar and Frazier and possibly an additional prospect, I don't know if you do that just for Syndergaard unless I guess you're getting Manny Machado. And I've been off the Manny Machado bandwagon here. And I thought the main reason why was because kind of the Ellsbury and Johnny Damon factor. And I was actually a Damon fan when he came over. I might be in the minority there, but for a lot of Yankee fans, they knew that when Damon came over, they were just not onto that. Same thing with Ellsbury, Red Sox. But you also have your section of Yankee fans that think it's a good move, and I think that actually with the Ellsbury one for sure, a lot of people were on board with that one. From what I know, at least in my circle, at the particular time I was at, and I wasn't, mainly because the reason was he's a Red Sox coming to the Yankees. How people forget that it's Manny Machado, a former Baltimore Oriole, and the Orioles terrible last season. But most of his tenure, I'm talking Manny Machado here, they were good. They played them in the first round of the playoffs in 2012. They were a team that made the playoffs more than the Yankees over the last 4 years, besides not including last season. So the previous 3 years before that, they made the playoffs more consistently than the Yankees did. They were a really good team, and Machado was a big part of that, and he was a guy that I think was just as hateable as guys like Ellsbury or Damon from the Red Sox. And I'm not saying that's the reason not to sign him. I'm just saying that's the number one reason. And the big reason to that is his attitude. And if you factor that in, not a good World Series performance on top of the statements of that hustling isn't in his game. And then the coup de grace, the thing that puts it over the top for me is that what I expected that the Yankees would have to give up for him, or by give up, I mean sign him to, is a really long deal for $300 million. I don't think Cashman's going to do that. If that is the stipulation for Machado, he's definitely not going to the Yankees, in my opinion. And that's why I thought he would definitely be going after that kind of money. Maybe I'm characterizing him and being unfair to him, but I felt like he was going to chase the paycheck, so he's going somewhere else because the Yankees aren't going to sign him to that, and that's why I wouldn't want to personally sign him to that. If that's what it comes down to. If Cashman decides to do that and trade for Syndergaard or another starting pitcher and gives up a lot, including Andujar, because he knows he's going to sign Machado to this ridiculous deal, I'm still against that, on top of everything that I've already said about Manny Machado. Disagree with me? You can at me on Twitter, at EricH1045. I would love to hear what you think. But look, I don't think that the Yankees should do that because they can use those pieces maybe in season in terms of Clint Frazier, if you really feel confident in what Brett Gardner is in left field. And the answer to that is, with McCutchen signing elsewhere, I don't think you are. If you are the Yankees, you are comfortable with the outfield. You went into the playoffs last year with Brett Gardner basically kind of like a fourth outfielder. And I guess you could say, Clint Frazier is going to be that possible start everyday left fielder in the Steed, or maybe you can get someone to DH while Stanton plays every day in the field, which I don't think the Yankees want to do, and I really wouldn't want to either. You'd rather have Stanton as a DH than use his glove per se out there in left field. I think he could handle it, but who's going to have the worst glove to be a DH? Like, it'd have to be like a Carlos Santana type who already was traded to the Mariners, but maybe he's on the table. I don't know. That's a completely different topic here. But someone like Andujar, I guess, is someone I would want to trade, but he seems to be a throw-in piece. Like, how many people are going to work a deal around for a top pitcher around Andujar? I don't think it's going to be that simple. It's not going to be that easy. So signing Manny Machado, to me, what makes more sense for me, actually, is trading, and this is going to sound a lot ridiculous, and I don't want to trade Clint Frazier. Believe you me, I don't. But if you already said to yourself, all right, we're not going to wait on Justice Sheffield, and I don't think Clint Frazier's a wait guy. I think he comes up, and if he's healthy, he can stay on the field like he wasn't able to do last year, and there's some concerns there, and maybe his value's down because of that as well. But if he can stay on the field, I think he's an everyday impact player. So the thing I'm about to say about Justice Sheffield might not apply to Clint Frazier, but what the Yankees did was, we don't want to wait for Justice Sheffield to adapt to the major league hitting the next 2 to 4 years, so we're going to go out and get a guy who's going to be able to compete right now in James Paxton. Well, they could do that with Clint Frazier by trading him for another pitcher and really going after Bryce Harper, and that's something I would rather see. I think his bat plays, and not that Machado's bat doesn't play, and his glove obviously it's always been very good, although he was, you should know this, for everyone who wants Manny Machado to fill in for Didi Gregorius at shortstop, you should know he was one of the worst defensive shortstops in the league last year in terms of, and I don't love getting into the analytics, but they show that he really wasn't the greatest shortstop. He's a fantastic third baseman, but he was not great at shortstop in the majority of his plays last year. So I'd be more comfortable of really sticking to the plan of what we have, and I think Cashman's kind of around that. Like, I'm going to try to work around a trade if it works for us. I'm going to sign a player if it works for us. You saw that with Patrick Corbin not signing with the Yankees and getting that 6th year and going to the Washington Nationals. I think Jay Happ is going to get a 3rd year, probably from the Philadelphia Phillies. So we already know Eovaldi's going to the Boston Red Sox. That leaves Dallas Keuchel. There's no way he's signing for less money than Patrick Corbin, or probably around there. If he wants to go to the Yankees, great. Cashman will probably will use that. He will get Keuchel if Keuchel is willing to lower his price ask. But it's all up to the price ask. And I think Cashman's doing the right thing. I'm going to give all the credit to Brian Cashman in terms of he is waiting for the right deal at the right time, not giving up too much. And I think that's where the Yankees are at right now, and I agree with it. The last thing that I will say is I do think they do need to make a big move for a big-time player. And if that ends up beating Manny Machado, I think I'm okay with it. But that's not my number one option. I'm fine with the patience. I want a shoe to drop here, but I'm fine with the patience of Brian Cashman getting the right deals at this point. And I really would like to see a move be made, but it has to be the right one. And honestly, even though I just said that I think that they do need to make a big move for a big-time player, if it doesn't happen this offseason, I would have enough faith in this roster the way it's constructed right now, although I do think they need to get another bullpen arm to make sure that their bullpen arms are legitimate like they were last year, because if they don't have Robertson or Britton, I know Ottavino's a big name. Can he really strike out Babe Ruth every single time? Don't love those comments in terms of reality, but I love the comments in terms of competition, I guess, right? He thinks he's a good pitcher, and that's who they decide to go after. I don't know. They just need to bring back some more pitching. They need to solidify that bullpen even more. That's probably the number one option I'm looking at right now. If they don't do anything else but bring back one of those two, Britton or Robertson, or bring in just another top-tier relievers, then I would go into the season thinking to myself, okay, the way the roster is constructed right now, the Yankees still can win 100 games again. They can do it. So I'm 100% okay with what's going on. The patience and the potential of nothing happening, while it would absolutely stink, and talk show radio will be going nuts, and Yankee fans will be going nuts, everybody will be over like, why are the Yankees not making the move? This is ridiculous. What's going on? I can probably wrap my head around it and say to myself, this is a team that's still going to be a really good competitive team. They held on to assets in terms of trade so they can possibly do it mid-season, kind of like they did last year. But for better pieces, I don't know. That's the question. That's what Cashman needs to figure out. And I think ultimately, if you don't go out and get Harper and Machado is the end-all be-all here, I'm fine with it as long as it's the right move and that they get the right player. Like if they overpay for Syndergaard, like I said at the top of this podcast, if they overpay for Syndergaard and sign Machado and overpay for him too at $300 million, I will not be happy with that. Maybe I'm being too critical. Maybe I'm trying to get all my wants. But I really don't want to see them overpay for anything and anywhere. And I think that includes for Syndergaard and for Manny Machado and for the guy I want and Bryce Harper. Do what's right for this team, because I think at this point, if you're the Yankees, you feel we need another piece to get over the top. But at the same time, you feel, look, we are still a really good team the way we're constructed now. James Paxton is an upgrade over the number 3 starter they had last year. Is he not? He's definitely an upgrade over J. Happ for he was down the stretch. And we didn't even have Happ most of the season. He was injured even when he came over at one point. So if anything, if you really want to look at it, sure, they lost McCutchen. But where they were at the end of last season, I really feel like, and then obviously the relievers, I really feel like if you solidify the relievers, you go after possibly another outfielder, but even if Frazier is healthy, I really do think this team is just as good right now than it was last year at the end of last year, which means that even if they don't get something crazy done before the season, the inevitability of a deadline move being next year puts you in a good position, if you're Brian Cashman, of being able to put over the top in July. And at that point, you'll know what you have in certain pieces. If Didi's going to be back in time, you'll be able to assess it there. And I think that the Yankees have the luxury to wait that long. It's just the outside noises are going to say, we don't want to wait that long. And that's what's going to happen. We'll see what the shoe falls. Like I said, something can happen between this podcast and when you listen to it. Definitely if you're listening to it really late here. Well, I appreciate you listening to me. I didn't keep it in single digits. That's the classic Sittin Sportside podcast move. You're always going to say it's going to be a short podcast, and then you ramble on for 13 minutes. Well, I thank you for listening. You can, as I said at the top of the podcast, find us on 1045theteam.com on the podcast tab, and I hope you're listening on Christmas Day. If you're not listening on Christmas Day, that's fine. Enjoy it with your family. But if you happen to be in the car from 12 to 3 here in the Capital Region, tune to 1045 The Team. Listen on the 1045 The Team app. Download it free and listen to that. Maybe while you're opening gifts? No. Maybe we're not the Golic Christmas special eating cookies. But we'll try to have a fun show for you if you are listening. If not, Merry Christmas to you and happy holidays all around. We will be back at some point on the Sittin Sportside podcast before that show, so stay tuned to this channel.